Welcome back to the Two Promises podcast. Let's dive right into another exciting adventure with BD and crew as he pursues his new passion of one day finding the most epic bourbon. The Two Promises team send their special thanks to Hobie and the Huckleberries for their masterful theme music. So grab a glass, relax, and enjoy responsibly.
Baby says she's leaving if I don't stop drinking wine. So I switched to whiskey, now I'm feeling fine. Drinking that smooth, smooth whiskey. No more wine. I like straight bourbon. Baby, you try the ride.
Welcome back to the show, everyone. Super excited to have a very special guest. He is a Navy SEAL brother who has had a career extensively in the SERE realm. He's done a lot of other great stuff for the community, instructing, leading, and with SERE, for those of you who do not know, that's survival, evasion, resistance, and escape. We're going to let him go into the weeds and the details on that. We're excited to have him on the show. And then after all of the great work he did for our country in the SEAL teams, he transitioned and he has been the star of a Discovery Channel show called Manhunt. It's a reality TV show, and we're excited to hear from him on what a lot of the details of that is. Mr. Joel Lambert, welcome to the show.
Thank you, sir, for having me on. Appreciate it. Nice to have another brother interviewing me.
Thank you. Yeah, so I've been following you for a while. I've seen your book coming out. I was super excited to jump on the opportunity to buy a copy and get it. And man, thumbing through it, it is extremely, extremely detailed, very thorough. It leaves absolutely nothing to chance, to guesswork. I mean, down to the calorie count of the food you recommend, it's all in here.
I'm very proud of it. Thank you. Yeah, it's a kind of the culmination of all the things, SEAL teams and then into Manhunt, where it just, like you mentioned, narrowed off into just solely really SERE, escape and evasion, and then kind of translating that into the book and distilling all the knowledge and really strategy, because it's all mindset. It's strategic and tactical thinking and having the tools in your toolbox to be able to select and make strategic choices and build a complete, just a resilient, safe place for you and your family. So it's kind of the culmination of my whole career, and I'm pretty proud of it.
That is super awesome. That is a big focus that we have here is preparedness, security. We're having another security expert SEAL on, a lot of the physical protection and things like that. So this is going to be an excellent complement to what we have in store for the listeners. I guess moving forward, let's take a step way back. And if you wouldn't mind telling us about your career in the SEAL teams and how that set you up for what you've got going on now.
Sure. Well, I went to BUD/S a little later. I was in my early 20s when I decided to finally join the Navy and go into solely for the SEAL teams. I didn't want to be in the Navy. I wanted to be a SEAL and more specifically see if I could do it or not. Test myself, the very nugget, the core of your soul. And so I started class 220 and I went through Hell Week with 220 and got double rolled for stress fractures in both my femurs because we were a spring class. So lots of running, lots of boats and logs and all that stuff. And so I then came back and finished with class 222 and then went to, of course, jump school and then out to the East Coast and did SQT at the time out there, or STT rather. It was STT. Yeah, it was STT at the time, SEAL Tactical Training. And then did a platoon at SEAL Team 2. And then Force 21 came along and I got moved over to SEAL Team 4 with a bunch of guys from my platoon. And then we deployed to Afghanistan. That was in early 2002. That was a pretty rough deployment. Awesome though. And then when I got back, I ended up taking shore duty out at BUD/S, and I was at Naval Special Warfare Center for 3.5 years. And then I got out and I went up, started working in Hollywood, stepped right up into that and started consulting on a bunch of stuff and, kind of working behind the camera, consulting and developing stuff. And one of my close friends that I met right when I got up there was a guy named James Jacks. You may know him as the producer of Tombstone, The Mummy, The Gift, The Game. I mean, this guy that every movie, and he had $2 billion worth of box office in the 80s and 90s for action movies. And so just an awesome dude. And, I was kind of not really sure about Hollywood. And then I meet Jim. And at Jim's parties, I'm meeting like Billy Bob Thornton and Michael Biehn and, all these people that starred in his movies, and Brendan Fraser. But the people I was meeting through Jim and Jim himself were just super cool. Jim's dad was a colonel in the Army who was in World War II. He was an artillery officer in World War II, and he was on Omaha Beach plus D-Day plus 48 minutes. Jim had his Omaha Beach map, his actual map, briefing map from the day of the invasion, framed up on his wall. So he was really patriotic and, had a strong tie to the military. And so I started working with him, and he was developing some scripts about SEALs in Afghanistan. And this was 2005, 2006, 2007, 2008. Nobody was ready for movies or anything about the war. Things were really nasty in Iraq. Nobody wanted to make movies yet. But, I worked with him and got to meet a bunch of amazing people and go to a bunch of parties and kind of get connected in and through some really great people. And so then I started working in the industry because they were great people. And then, of course, working in the industry, I found out how rotten most of the other people are. And then, went on in my own career from there. So that's a much more exhaustive answer, but
man, that is so awesome though, because I mean, those are some of my cinematography, like heroes, if you will. Tombstone, incredible film. A lot of the other films that you mentioned, just epic. In fact, on my 6th deployment, we used like a logo. Our platoon logo was kind of the face of Doc Holliday.
Awesome.
Yeah. So, and we also made a 5-gallon run of a bourbon that I'm hope to push out eventually to market. He was a huge inspiration for what our platoon kind of core was.
So I love that movie, and Jim tells stories about it all the time. And my last memory of Jim was in December. It was Christmas time, and Jim would always, if he didn't have a date to any of these cool parties, he'd always put me down as a +1. So I go to the Christmas party with Jim, the universal Christmas party. Like not their one for office workers and stuff. This is like their tier 1 for the execs and all the A-list actors and stuff. The universal Christmas party at the Chateau Marmont in Hollywood. And I go with Jim, and we get a beer at the bar, and we're turning to look around. There's like everybody, Chris Pine, and just everybody just milling around in this circle. And then Powers Booth, Curly Bill Brocious, comes walking up to Jim, and he's like, "Hey, Jim." They hadn't seen each other in forever. So they start slapping hands. We go, he gets a drink. Is me, Jim Jacks, and Powers Booth, Curly Bill Brocious. We go and sit down at a little table in the dark corner, and I just sip on a whiskey and listen to Powers Booth and Jim swap Tombstone stories, like behind the scenes Tombstone stories, just for an hour. It was amazing. And like 3 weeks later, Jim died of a heart attack. But that was my last time I saw Jim. It was a good finish.
Yeah, what a great tribute to him and
Right.
all of his legacy. Thank you for sharing that. So we're getting into the Hollywood thing. I'm super excited about it. I kind of dabbled in that myself as I was transitioning out. However, I'm kind of curious if you could share with our listeners a little bit about the depth of your experience in the SERE schools that you went through. So you didn't just do the basic SERE school that every SEAL does. You went way above and beyond that and dove like in headfirst.
Yeah, so I went to SERE because, what it's like in your first platoon. I think it was my first platoon. And, you're just kind of there shoving you wherever, they just check all the blocks. And then if stuff pops up, they just send 2 or 3 guys. So 2 or 3 guys from my first platoon and I went to the original SERE, like the basic SERE in Maine, I believe it was. And it was a winter SERE class in Maine. And that was basic SERE. Crazy experience. I mean, I had a lot of negative experience. There were some really funny stories, but it was, the most incredibly immersive. I mean, they build this scenario out so well and so completely that you go through. And I was really fascinated with, because all the survival, all the primitive skills, all the tracking, all the booby trap, all the John Rambo stuff, all that stuff was really intriguing to me. And this is a lot of what I thought more of the SEAL teams would be like, before I joined, kind of our imaginary, what it's going to be. The brochure was kind of like a lot more John Rambo SERE type stuff. And even though it sucked, I was really fascinated by all the survival, all the tracking, the booby traps, the psychological games, and then the capture and the resistance and all the psychological games that went on there. And it was just this immersive, crazy, it just kind of lit me on fire. So I was like, this is really cool. And it's kind of masochistic because really having a bunch of SERE schools doesn't do anything for you in the Navy at all. It just was something that I really dug. And so then I went to Desert SERE in the West Coast and learned all the desert specific stuff. And I just got turned on by this stuff. And so then when I'm out and I'm in LA now, I'm in Hollywood and I'm working with Jim and I'm doing a lot of, weapons consultations on scripts and military advising on certain things. And I'm doing a little bit in front of the camera, but not very much. I'm doing a lot behind the camera. And then a friend of a friend reached out to me in a veterans group in LA. And he said that he had a friend who was developing a television show, which everybody in Hollywood is, you've done a little, everybody's got something, it's, developing a television show. Sure. You're a waiter and you had an idea when you're taking a shit one day, that's about, it could be at that level, or it could be, something that's about to get purchased by a major network. You have no idea. But he said this guy was looking, he had an idea for a show. He was developing a television show and he was looking for former special operations personnel with a strong background in tracking and escape and evasion. And I had that. And of course, I had a career in the SEAL teams. And so this was a friend of a friend. And so whatever, I sent him my resume. And then the guy calls me up, super excited. Turns out this guy's a former Green Beret, super excited, chatting with him. And he's like, can you fill out your resume? Can you go through your schools? Can you send me some tape on you? Can you, send me some? So I'm sending him some stuff. And he's like, he loves it. It's fantastic. I film myself asking some questions for whoever his partners are. I don't know. I'm not paying attention to whatever BS I think this guy's got going on as far as whatever show fantasy he has in his mind of what he's creating. But I send him stuff and do a little video interview with him for whoever this is that he's working for. And then he calls me up, a couple of weeks go by and he's like, hey, can you come out to the Palm Desert with me and shoot some, and I want to get some tape on you. And I said, actually, I can't. I've already done enough. I've sent you so much stuff. I've done some video interviews for you. I've kind of helped you develop this thing. And I just got other things to do. And he said, well, I'll pay you. I'm like, I think it was only like $300 or $400, but I'm like, okay, I can get out of LA. I've got no money at the time. I'll make a few bills. He'll put me up in a hotel. I'll go run around the desert and shoot his crappy little, whatever he wants to shoot, sizzle reel with his buddy and their Super 8 camera or on their iPhone or whatever they're going to do. And then the next day I'll go climbing in Joshua Tree. Cool. All right. It's a great weekend. I get out of LA and my weekend is covered. So I'm like, all right, I'll go do that. So I'm driving out to Palm Desert, Palm Springs, 29 Palms area. And I'm driving out and I assuming, they're going to put me up in some crappy little Super 8, which is fine. I've got some climbing gear. I've got my shit. And he also told me prepare some booby traps to demonstrate. I don't prepare anything. I'm done working without any pay. So I drive out. I'm assuming I'm going to be on like a Super 8 and I'm following the directions. I've got MapQuest out and I'm driving down this long driveway and there's palm trees. I'm like, wow, this is pretty nice. And I drive up, pull up to this big circular driveway where there's like Maseratis and Benzes and Ferraris lined up. This is a beautiful resort in Palm Springs. I'm like, wow, guys really springing for this. So I go check into the hotel and I get some materials they give me and I go to my room and sit down and the phone rings. I'm like, hello? And there's this female. She's like, Mr. Lambert, I know you're not scheduled to work till tomorrow, but the vice president of Discovery International, SERE Davies, just flew in from London and she's wondering if you'll have dinner with her tonight. And at that point, the light bulb finally goes off above my head. I'm like, oh, this is actually real. This is something. There's something really going on here. And so then that night I go out to dinner with Sarah and she's awesome. She's this big British woman, really brash and hilarious and a little caustic. And so I drink a little too much whiskey, tell a little too many, I get a little raunchy with some of my team guy stories and stuff, but apparently it works.
As you
really
do.
well. Yeah, as we do. And so then the next day I go run around the desert and I'm shooting and they've got a little film crew, like a small little film crew. And they had a couple other guys. They had a SAS guy they flew in from Hereford that they were looking at and another dude, an American guy. And so they test us and we run around, they kind of test our knowledge, ask us certain things. They got an SAS guy there who's kind of running with, who's advising. And he's like, so what would you do right here if you're on escape and evasion? If you had this scenario, how would you move through these? I'm just moving through and doing what I do and talking to the camera as I'm doing it. And then they want a booby trap. I'm like, oh shit, I didn't really do that. So I find some telephone wire in the desert because there's a bunch of blown up, old buildings were running around and a cinder block. And I make a real rudimentary tripwire and crush a Coke can. I found out with the cinder block that I hung up through a doorway and they absolutely loved it because I kind of pulled it out of my ass. And so then at that point, I just knew that this was what I was going to be doing. I just had no doubt. And so then a couple weeks later, they called me up and said I had got the show. And I'm like, oh, great. I knew I did. I knew it was mine. And then, sometimes in life, things line up perfectly. And you go, this is what's happening. And that was what this was. And so I knew that. And then we shot our first pilot episode in Arizona. It was brutal. And it was funny because we're doing the development for the show. And so there's all these Discovery Channel. Of course, it's on Discovery Channel. There's all these Discovery Channel veteran sound guys and camera guys and stuff. And I'm like, you guys have never done anything this difficult. What we're going to do in Escape and Evasion, you guys don't have any clue. And they're all like, we've done Ice Road Truckers and Deadliest Catch. This is going to be no. I'm like, you have no idea what's going to happen. And so, of course, they didn't. And so we get out there and the military thing, if you ain't cheating, you ain't trying. So then the Army's just going cheating gangbusters against us. So we're scrambling, trying to keep them from cheating and ruining the whole TV show while still maintaining Hunt and actual tracking a unique corridor, what the show was. And then guys are quitting, like our camera guys and stuff, they're quitting. They're going to the hospital with heat stroke and dehydration. One guy quit on top of the mountain. So they're flying people out emergency wise. The executive producers in the field with the camera, they're flying people out, sound guys from LA for emergencies to fill in. It was crazy. The second season, it had gotten around town. And the word was throughout, all the crew guys, camera and sound and stuff in the reality and unscripted world. The word was at all the agencies, someone's going to die doing Manhunt. It's a great show and it's a good pay. If you want to do it, it's an awesome show, but someone's going to die. Someone's going to die.
Yeah, that is legit and super intense. So that kind of touches on where I'd say that our experiences blend just slightly. I didn't do a lot of work at the time. There was a lot kind of going on in my life, but I did get to do some consulting for security, safety, and as a set medic.
Awesome.
So
yeah.
Yeah, so we almost did a show. It got shut down due to COVID, a survival type thing, almost Robinson Crusoe, Swiss Family Robinson, probably more accurate, where they brought families to do like building their own house with what they find, like if they had gotten washed up to shore, and that was eventually going to be the house they lived in, but they wanted to incorporate sustainable projects within the build. Yeah, so whenever you say, hey, someone is going to die on this because of how intense it was, that speaks volumes to me in that little bit of a slice that I saw of the pie there. So that's so exciting. So you went from Arizona, and then I was reading in your book that you also went and you did more urban stuff like throughout Europe and things like that. Would you mind sharing some of your experience in that realm?
Yeah. Well, the first season we did almost everything in different ecosystems, but in the wild. So it was places like, Inner Mongolia, some of the Pearl Islands off the coast of Panama, the Bieszczady Mountains in Poland, right on the border of Poland and Ukraine, with a lot of human trafficking and smuggling going across. So mostly in wilderness type areas. But then we designed one of them where we're going to go to South Korea and go against the South Korean KNP, I think is what their unit is, which is their Korean National Police. It's their FBI, like HRT. It's their tier 1 strike / cop military, paramilitary type. And the thing is, they have so much assets. They have anything money can buy, they have, but they don't have the skill sets because there's just nothing real going on for them. They just never get to do anything. So they train a lot. They do a lot of Aussie style rappelling. They have really shiny patches. They do fun stuff. But as far as the groups that I would go against like the Philippine Scout Rangers. They're out there, they're in combat like every freaking day. And these guys just weren't. But it was on this island where there are 5,000 security cameras, all linked together, all with facial recognition, passing through like a whole network of 5,000 cameras and license plate readers, just a fully dystopian electronic network. And I get there and I had a whole bunch of plans because when I'm getting ready to do an episode, I, of course, research where I'm going to be, all the basic stuff, food, water, shelter, temperature differential, availability of water, medicinal plants, edible plants, venomous snakes, venomous bug, all the stuff I need to know for the environment I'm going to be in. And then, of course, the hunter force that I'm going up against. Who are these guys? How do they usually work? Who do they go against? Because I want to stay in their purview. So I want to kind of plan my strategy around what it is that they do. But then working within that, I want to beat them. But I want it to be something that's familiar to them. So every scenario would be something like, here's a poacher or here's someone, a human smuggler who crosses this fence, and we see this all the time. And so then I bring a higher level of fugitive to what it is that they're doing. So I want to know everything about them, what assets they use, what are they good at? Are they good at electronic stuff? Are they good at are they, nose to the ground, human trackers? What do they do? And then I also want to plan an overall strategy. I plan 3 or 4 booby traps or deception trails, because deception trails are the best thing. But I plan 3 or 4 that might work based on the map that I'm looking at. Oh, here's a convergence of 2 different tributaries to come together into a bigger stream. What kind of cool deception or booby trap could I do there if circumstances force me into this area? So I have 4 or 5 things that are halfway thought out, and I make sure I have what access to whatever I might need to do that on the day. And then when I'm actually on the run and I come across and I'm like, oh shit, here's that place where those tributaries came together. And they're only about a half mile behind me, and they're split into 2 elements. I could do that thing. And so then I stop and I have it already 3/4 of the way baked, and then I can put it together really quickly because it's all real time. And then afterwards we do the whole hunt, and then, I'd win or I'd get caught. And then the next day, for the next 3 days, we would do pickup shots, because most of the time, like if I'm doing a booby trap and my camera guy's down there, he's like, okay, tell me what you're doing, Joel. I'm like, shut up, just watch that back. I'm not talking, it's quiet, they're right around the corner or whatever. I'm just doing the stuff in the real time. So then the next day we go back and I rebuild it, and I tell the camera, this is what I'm doing and this is how it's going to work. And, so they have the content to put in the actual day of action hunt. I really prepare by planning as much as I could and then seeing what happened. But then when we're on Jeju, I was like, okay, there's all these cameras. I had all these plans, the cameras and how I can blend in and what I can do to beat the facial recognition. I've done all my research and everything. I'm like, it'll be tricky.
Because you're not going to stand out in Asia at all.
I'm not going to stand out.
Just as you are already.
I mean, yes, but then you go to places like Tokyo or Beijing or Shanghai or places like that, there's Westerners everywhere. So I'm like, I'll stand out a little bit, but no big deal. We get to Jeju Island. This is like a honeymoon spot for South Korea. I am the only 6-foot white motherfucker on the entire island. And so there's no chance whatsoever of blending in. So I do 4 hours or so of zipping around the city and realizing it's just a matter of time. They've got a whole command center, like in the Apollo 13 movies, the whole walls full of TV screens, and all the banks of computer terminals. So I'm like, it's a matter of time. I'm not going to make it. So I did a whole 180 change of plans and took this island's based around a volcano, and took a cab out and dumped my shit and ran out up onto the island, and we ran out into the volcano. So my only time I really tried to go against the facial recognition and the cameras, I was like, nope, I'm going to go back to what I know and what I can do best.
Yeah, I can hear you there, because I've also spent some time in Korea, and it might be a little bit past that time, but I know that they have been really on the cutting edge of those CCTV networks, and you couldn't drive without, having like traffic cams. And apparently even while I was there driving, they would even do the math on what your speed was between the things. And if they noticed that you had increased and were speeding between them, even if they didn't catch you speeding then, that you could still potentially get a ticket.
And after the hunt, they, when I saw because we have cameras with all of their guys as well too. And when I saw what they were doing, what they're cutting together after the hunt, they had me when I got in that cab, and they got the cab's license plate, and they got the cab going through every intersection. They knew exactly where I was the whole time until I ditched the cab.
Yeah. I mean, I really enjoyed working with the Koreans. It's been one of the favorite countries that I visited, so I've got some really great experiences from there. But yes, they are on it in a lot of ways. So they're very professional, very great force to work with. I worked obviously with the flotilla NSW side. I didn't do a lot of work with their police agencies or anything like that. So it's really cool to see your experience there matches a lot of what I saw as well.
It was awesome. The hunts we would do, dude, it would just wreck me. I mean, just full. Well, very few people know what it's like, except for, if you've been put on E&E after a 4-day, just a dick dragger op or something, just even in training. And then you put on E&E for even another 6 or 12 hours is like the most miserable thing that can ever happen to you. So I'm doing that for 3 days straight with people who actually want to hunt me, who I don't know, and who are going to take me down hard if they can, for God and country. And it was like, when I finished one, my adrenaline, dude, I couldn't even do like a 20-inch box jump. I mean, my adrenals were just blown and my nervous system was just fried. It was so rough.
I can imagine. That's really cool. So one thing I haven't been highlighting on my show too much for whatever reason, but I'd like to try to swing it that way if we can. I like to incorporate humor.
Oh, yeah.
I like to get people laughing a little bit. Is there a story, either from your military experience or for filming one of these shows, that you can share that was just caught you super funny at the time, or you think it'd be really interesting for us to hear about?
Well, it's not like the super funniest story, but it's one of my favorite stories, which happened in the Pearl Islands in Panama when we were doing Manhunt. So we had done the whole hunt and I'd gotten away. And one of the maneuvers I pulled that I was very proud of, I'd gone through this mangrove swamp and I'd swum out to this little island, this tiny little rock, really, who was off the main island that we were doing this hunt on. And these little islands just off the south coast of Panama, a little island string. So there's nothing on it, no lights, just pitch black, dark. And I went out to this little island. I spent the night out there and I ate a snake that I'd caught earlier, a boa constrictor. And I made this little raft. And then when the tide was coming in the next morning, I put my stuff and my camera guy's stuff on this little raft and I put my fins on and I just swam this little raft up this little estuary. And I was going to go like 500 meters up. So basically, they followed my trail until it ended in a mangrove swamp that had flooded. And then who knows where I went from there, but I'd gone out to this island and then I was swimming up a estuary. They never would have found me. So I'm swimming up and then I see some caiman swimming around. I'm like, okay, time to get out. So I got out a little earlier than I expected and they picked up my trail. But so I got away. The end of the hunt, we had to go back and shoot some more content on the little island I was on. So we went out to the little island and did it at night, a couple nights later. And we do all the content. And then we get back in this little boat. It was like a little Zodiac, but we had 5 people in it and we were like hanging on to each other so you didn't fall out. We had a 1.5 horsepower engine. It was a tiny little rubber raft. So then we're going back into the island, which is probably 40 or 50 meters, not very far to the island. And one of the safety guys is in the front of the boat and he's got his flashlight out and he's looking out for rocks because all this jagged volcanic rock. So he's looking out for rocks and all of a sudden we hear this and I'm sitting right across, jammed in from my producer, Brian Nat Miller is the producer, long red hair, it's built like a giraffe, has a neck about this long. And we hear this smash, slap, blah, 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 blah. We all start screaming. The boat just is like, oh, look at each other. Wow, what the fuck was that? What was that? What was that? It was a fish. Fish jumped in the boat. What the fuck? And we're like, we all calmed down for a minute. Like, what happened? A fish jumped in the boat. Did you see it? I didn't see it. Like this huge fish jumped right in the boat. And I'm like, oh shit, Brian. And his head's down. I'm like, Brian, did you see that fish? And his head comes up and he's like, blood is just gushing out of his neck. He's got this like dime size hole, like right about here, just above his trap, but in his neck. And it's not pulsing blood, but it's like flowing. It's like blood is flowing out, not under arterial pressure, but about as flowy as it can get without being under arterial pressure. And so we're like, yeah, direct pressure. And we take him in and we take him back to where they're staging everything. And they sew him up. Our set medic sews him up. And we're on a little island off the coast of Panama. I mean, we're as far removed, really. We're pretty far removed from, any help. The only electricity we have is from a generator, small generator. And so they sew it up. And then they're like, do you feel any better? And he's like, I feel a little better. But then they noticed this big lump in his neck. And they're like, oh my God. They had to put him in a boat, drive him to the next island that had a airstrip that they could actually light up with the generator. So they got a small plane in and then flew him to mainland, to Panama City, where he went surgery. And what happens is ballyhoo, they have these proboscis on these flying fish. They have these big spears on the front of them about this long. And one of them had jumped out of the boat, attracted by our safety guy. Our safety guy screwed him over, was flashlighting, and so the fish was attracted to the light, jumped in the boat, stabbed him through the neck, broke off 2 inches of proboscis in this dude's neck, a centimeter from his carotid artery and 1.5 centimeters from his spinal cord, and then broke it off and then flopped and fell into the ocean. So they had to cut the other side of his neck and push it all the way through and then irrigate it. That ended up being in the episode.
Wow.
Yeah, it was crazy. So this dude almost got killed by a flying fish. The luckiest unlucky dude I've ever heard of in my life.
It's so interesting that you bring that up, because I've noticed in my career a lot of those super near misses where it's like another centimeter, another inch, and it would have been a completely, probably life-threatening injury. So good for you for being there, having the knowledge and the background to be able to put that direct pressure, direct treatment, and make sure that he got evac. So had you not been there, there's a potential that that could have ended a lot more poorly.
Well, we had a couple guys there. We're all working on him, but still, it was a crazy, crazy experience. And, I mean, then of course it went out and was aired on Discovery Channel. And so now everybody knows his story. It was intense.
Wild. So I want to be respectful of your time. I know that you don't have a ton more time for this show. I'm super grateful that you did come on with us. Before we go, I would like to touch on your book, The Bug Out Guide. Maybe tell us a little bit about the heartbeat behind that, the vision behind it, and what you're doing with it.
I'm super glad you brought that up. So I have my book, A Navy SEAL's Bugging Guide. While I was doing Manhunt, about that same time, bug out bags became the cool thing in the public eye, kind of that intersection of the public gets fascinated with some aspect of military life, and bug out bags was the thing, and bugging out. So being that I was essentially doing that professionally for a global audience on TV against the most baddest dudes on the planet, everyone would always ask me, what's in your bug out bag, and what's your bug out plan? And do you want to market some bug out bag, put your name on it? And I always said, I mean, it's an awesome skill set and it makes for fantastic TV. And it's something that's obviously very close to my heart and something I developed as a skill set, not ever really seeing that it was going to be valuable for anything other than my own personal edification. But bugging out, except in very unique and specific circumstances, is the worst possible choice. I mean, this is escaping a bit. This is when everything that can possibly go wrong has gone wrong. And now you're at the very last year. You've got your E&E kit, you got your bug out bag, and you're desperately running away only to have to try to reestablish shelter, water, food, navigation, communication, connection with friendlies, all the things that you have in your house. So it makes much more tactical and strategic sense to prepare your house so that you should never have to bug out, except for if a tornado is barreling straight towards your house, or you live in the Pacific Palisades or something like that, and you got to get away. Aside from that, everything else, civil unrest, war, riots, EMP knocking the grid down, blackouts, weather events, all that stuff, prepare so that you have all the things you need and you have a plan. More importantly, as you know, you never want to make a plan when you're cold, wet, tired, hungry, or afraid. That's what you make your plan when you're at your very best, so that when you are cold, wet, tired, hungry, and afraid, you have your training, your plan already established when you know you're at your soundest of mind, established and laid out. And then you can go, okay, well, what's my plan? I'm not thinking very well. All I want to do is eat a meal and go to sleep. But here's my plan. Okay, here's what we got. Boom, 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 boom. Execute, 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 So I put in here a guide, and there's something in here for everybody. Seasoned preppers, seasoned bushcraft people. There's something in this for them, but I mostly wanted to write it for people who are not preppers, who are not thinking like we think and have that mindset where you're just naturally protecting your house for your family and stuff. It's just, you can't not do that. That's just something that's wired in our DNA. Well, it's not wired in everybody's DNA. And there's a lot of single mothers out there and families that never thought that we'd see what we've seen since 2020 or 2017 until now. And so here's a way that anybody, no matter what kind of living situation they have or what kind of budget they have, can have all the options to develop all those aspects of survival and security, so that they'll be able to work within their budget and within their skill set, and maybe more importantly, within their comfort zone of what they're comfortable doing and what they're comfortable envisioning for them and preparing for. And they'll have everything they need right here. I have QR codes so people can scan it and go right to Amazon or Walmart or whatever and order online, whatever tool or item I highlight in here for whatever section it might be. But, we cover food, water storage, food storage, like you mentioned, menus, communications, a big one, ingress, egress, fortifying your house if you have to defend it, routes, visuals, dealing with FEMA, dealing with the government. Even for long-term stuff, I've got how to build some field expedient, generators and, Amish refrigerators and power generators and things. They're going to take a couple hours of your afternoon to build and some supplies, But if we're in a more long-term area, if you have a lot of land, or if you really want to be fully prepared, I have everything in here that anyone could need. I'm pretty proud of it.
It is super amazing. Absolutely. So even if, hey, an electricity, a refrigerator that doesn't even need an electricity, there's plans for that in there. I mean, he, like I said, when I say it leaves nothing to chance, nothing to question, he is that details. He shows you exactly how to do it, considerations, pros, cons, even choices of firearms. Literally, this book is the exhaustive resource for anyone who is looking to prepare their family for an emergency. So I love the heartbeat behind it.
Thank you. We have a unconditional money back guarantee, and you get some free downloads of some other electronic books when you buy it. Of course, mine is a physical copy because it wouldn't make sense to have a book like this not be a physical copy. But you also got free downloads of some other electronic books on some foraging and plant wild plants and things like that, and a money back guarantee. So buggingandguide.com. If you're not 100% satisfied, send it back. The rest of the stuff is yours to keep, but we'll give you your money back.
Awesome. Are there any 1-2 big takeaways from there that you haven't shared that you think of?
I think there's one thing I want to say, because there tend to be, I've noticed, there's kind of a divergence of schools of thought, really, when in the prepping and homesteading and survival and bugging in kind of communities. And one of them is what we've always kind of, or I always have, and a lot of our brothers kind of always have, is like, yeah, shit, it's a fan. I'll just go take your shit, because I have guns and I have ammo and all that. Well, if you really think that through, that's a terrible idea. It will work once, and then you've created something that's much worse. And so really, over the course of my career and my life, I have really gravitated more toward building community, because community is what we want. I want to build the America that I want to live in. So I have my dairy farmer down the street that I buy my raw milk from every week. I have my cattle rancher that I get my antibiotic-free, grass-fed, grass-finished, pasture-raised beef and turkey and pork from. I raise chickens, so I have my own eggs. I have a garden. I have bees. I know the herbalists in my town, and I know all these people, and they can come get things from me, and I can get things from them. And if shit were to hit the fan, and everybody from Nashville is now starting to come out here to the country to try to get all the things that they can't get. Well, the guy who I've been buying grass-fed and grass-finished beef from every year, every month for the last 3 or 4 years, who I know on a first-name basis, and Mike, my dairy farmer, who are they going to sell to? I've got relationships, and we've got people that we can take care of each other, and we can build the America that I want to live in. And so that's really the heartbeat behind the heartbeat. That's the intention, and what I hope people get out of it is not go buy all these guns I tell you to buy, and then you can take everything you need from your neighbor and you can build the punji pits and stuff. No, don't do that. You're going to kill your neighbor's cat, your kid, his kid, and his dog's going to get stabbed up, and then your neighbor's going to hate you, and everything's going to go to shit. So build community, build the America that we want to be in, because this kind of stuff is not just for shit hitting the fan. This is for connection to the life that we live.
And I absolutely love that. That's a big part of our heartbeat here too. And that's a great place to put a pin on it. Thank you so much for being on the show. Is there any place that you'd like to send the listeners for where they can find you?
Well, buggingandguide.com is where you can get my book. But on my social medias, I'm pretty active. You can find me on Joel Lambert as an account on Facebook, and then Joel5326 on Instagram and Twitter. And you can always reach out to me through there. I'm pretty responsive if anybody wants to.
Super great. It's been excellent having you on the show. And a little heads up for the listeners, we will be doing a promotion where you have a chance to win I think I'm going to have one of two of these books. So thank you so much for being on the show. We look forward to seeing your future success and progress. And thanks for sharing all of your wisdom with us.
Appreciate it, brother.
Thank you for joining us today on this curious roller coaster of life. If this is your stop, please exit peacefully. Enjoy the rest of your day. If you're ready for another one, just push play. Just a final note before you go, thank you, and thank you for feeling. The distillation and aging process is different for everyone. I'm not quite sure what you're ready for. Sip slowly and enjoy responsibly.
Baby says she's leaving if I don't stop drinking wine. So I switched to whiskey and I'm feeling fine. Drinking that smooth, smooth whiskey. No more wine. I like straight